Hi, I'm Vic Bearcroft, and today I'm going to be painting a German Shepherd puppy in pastel on velour paper. I've already prepared an outline because we're going to use Tracedown paper to transfer the sketch onto the velour. So first of all, I'll just tape it in position. Remember, of course, to have your Tracedown paper facing the right way between your sketch and the velour paper. To transfer the sketch onto the paper, I'm going to be using an 8B graphite pencil. This is soft enough so that it won't leave any traces or indentations in the paper as you sketch around it. And you don't have to press very hard for this. So literally, quite softly, just sketch around your outline. You don't have to be too precise at this stage. Remember, it's only a sketch. And the idea is, of course, to get everything in the right place, all the proportions and so on. So we don't have to do a lot of detail. Just make sure that you cover everything, of course. And this is where the soft pencil will come in useful, because you can actually see where you've gone and know if you've missed any bits. So as far as the outline is concerned, I'm going to keep it fairly sketchy, fairly loose, and then just maybe a little bit tighter, a bit more precise around the eyes, the nose and the mouth, the important features. It might be as well, after you've done a bit, just to lift the trace down to check that it's going through. No problems at all. So it doesn't want to be too heavy, just enough so that you can see it. And remember, the softer the pencil you use, the less of an indentation you'll make on the paper, which can be hard to get rid of. One thing that you may find as you're tracing down, you might get some imprints from the trace down, from your hand, from your fingers, but they can easily be removed later on with a softened putty rubber. So don't worry about those marks. Just going to make sure I get the shape of the reflection in the eye in the right place. That's going to help us a lot later on. And around the nose a little bit more carefully. So the nose has to be quite a precise shape. It's not necessary really to do these whisker lines, but I just like to keep them in place to help show the curve of the puppy's cheeks. And some nice soft fur edges around the neck. And we'll just lift it to make sure everything's in place before we take the trace down off. Yep, I'm happy with that. So now I can take the trace down off and prepare for the next stage. Right, now we're ready for stage 2, and stage 2 is the tonal sketch. The tonal sketch is important because it literally sets the tone for the rest of the painting. It'll also change your colours as you put them on, so where you have a dark tone underneath, it'll darken the colour automatically. So let's begin by using the black soft pastel just to sketch the outline and the main features of our puppy. Don't press on too hard, because remember, this is a soft pastel and it's black, of course, and if you press too hard you'll get too dark or too thick a mark. So sketch around the shapes of the fluffy ears using our trace down for those broad shapes, and then we can now start to refine them a little bit. Where we have a faint outline in the back of the ear, which is a lighter tone, a lighter colour, we don't want to draw around that because it would be wrong to have a hard outline around everything. It would make it look too cartoony. So only concentrate on the very dark areas. So this is a two-part sketch. The first part is actually sketching in the details and the outlines as we see them. And the second part will be more concentrated on the general tones. So again, look for outlines of tone. Try, if you can't see the tones clearly, try squinting at your reference. That will blur out any details and just leave you with broad areas of light and dark. Now the paper I'm working on is the sand-coloured velour paper, which is ideal for this because we have the general sort of sandy coloured tones in our puppy. And some of that tone will show through and help to provide the overall colour scheme of our puppy. So remember, this is just a sketch, so don't try and get bogged down with too much details at this stage. But the whole thing should be nice and sketchy at the end. I'm concentrating on tone, colour and basic shapes. Now the eyes, of course, are very important, so we must remember to treat those a little bit more carefully. And you can get a fairly good sharp mark with the edge of these soft pastels. They do have a nice sharpened edge, even though it's round. We need to place the pupil, so that gives us a fix on the expression in the eye, also which direction the eye is looking. Just carefully put those in, and then the dark area around the nose, around the mouth, and so on. Again, on the nose itself, the edge of the nose, this edge is quite highlighted, so we don't want to make that too strong. So we'll just leave a little bit and have it come darker around the actual nose pad, the black part of the nose. And have that coming into the cleft in between the lips, as you can see there, and the top lips slightly overhanging. And then again, these whisker follicles, just sketch them in as little simple lines, and that's pretty much the first part of our tonal sketch completed. Let me just check. A little bit more fur around the bottom, I think. And then we're ready for the second part of the tonal sketch. The second part, as I said, is all about putting in general tones, so dark tones. There are quite a lot of dark tones on this German Shepherd puppy, as you can see. So I'm going to use a little smaller section of that black soft pastel, because I'm going to use it on the side, almost like a 1/4-inch brush, just to fill in general areas. Now remember, again, don't press too hard, because otherwise you will get a solid black. And we want the colours and tones to be nice and translucent. So again, in the general area where we see the tones, you don't have to be too specific, remember, just pop a little bit of tone down using the side of the pastel like that. And then it's important, after you've done that, in fact after you've done each little section, just to take your finger, rub the black, push it into the paper, and this does two things. First of all, it will settle the pastel into the paper, so it fixes it. It won't move after that. And secondly, of course, what it does is gives you soft edges. And there are no hard edges on our German Shepherd puppy, so we want to keep the edges nice and soft. So remember, do a little section, like that for example, and then push it in, stroke it in almost with your finger. You see how soft that becomes? It also takes off a little bit of the darkness as well, because you will take excess off with your finger, as well as pushing most of the pastel into the paper to fix it there. That's the advantage of using a velour paper, is that once its pastel is pushed in, then it's very difficult to get out. So it means you don't have to fix it at the end. What you put there will stay there. There's a nice dark bit just above the eye, and coming down to the corner of the mouth. Again, try not to be too specific about shapes, just general areas of tone. That's all we're looking for. We can sharpen up the details much later on. Nice dark tone into his neck, under the chin. A little bit of dark fur on the edge here. If you can, try to stroke in the direction that you see the fur growing. This will obviously help getting that pattern of fur and getting the right look for the different breaks in the fur, the different directions and so on. Now we're ready for this ear. Again, nice soft layer of dark inside that ear. Nothing too strong. Rub it in. Use your finger to help create the shapes as well. So you won't blend the pastel too much, but you can sort of guide it into the right shape. A little bit on the outside of the eye, on that side. And then we have the dark nose, of course. We'll start around the nose into the jowls. So bring that back. Rubbing it in, softening it off, and then just a light tone at this stage for the nose pad, the fleshy part of the nose. So we'll just make a final check that we have all the tones in the right place. Again, squinting at it will help. Squint at your reference, then squint at your sketch, and you can see tones much more clearly. You won't be swamped down with too much detail. A little bit more tone in that ear. And that's our tonal sketch complete. Now we're ready for stage 3. Stage 3 is blocking out. So simply blocking out the main colours, the principal colours of our portrait. For this I'm going to use 3 colours. I'm going to use the warm dark orange, which is the overall tone of the German Shepherd, apart from the black of course. And then I'm going to use Prussian blue for the nose, around the eyes, and finally dioxazine violet for the highlights on the nose. So let's first use the dark orange, starting with the ear again, and this time again using the flat of the pastel. All I'm looking for is basic colours over our tonal sketch. Don't have to keep within specific lines, just put that colour down in the general area where you think it appears. Now, often when you're blocking out, as much as possible you should try to look for the most vivid colours you can find in your subject. The reason for that is because you're potentially painting layers of detail over the top, and if you have good strong vivid colours underneath, that will give a lot of depth to your painting or your sketch, and it'll help to create more of a sense of realism. So just looking around, seeing where the overall dark orange colour appears. Very, very simple, so don't stress over doing too much detail at this stage, and then we'll just give it a rub as before to settle the pastel into the paper and keep the edges nice and soft. You'll notice now while I'm rubbing the dark orange over the tonal sketch isn't moving, it's fixed. And the same will happen with the dark orange. When that's rubbed in, it'll be fixed onto the paper. So let's move next on to the second colour, which is our Prussian blue. And the Prussian blue is principally to highlight the dark areas. Dark fur, black fur indeed, always has a tone, whether it be blue or brown. And whatever that tone appears to be, then we need to get that colour down quite early on. Also, it has the advantage of reacting against the dark orange, giving us a cool tone, which helps to push those dark areas back. Whereas the warm tone, of course, appears to come forward. Again, this will give us greater depth in the painting. So all around the nose, especially over the tip of the nose pad, of course, dogs that have black noses for certain, they're usually cold. So we can give the appearance of the cold black nose by giving it an undercoat of blue. A little bit to balance in the dark fur around the edges. And our final colour is the dioxazine violet. This is almost like a Palmer violet colour. So again, we're looking for soft, cool areas. For example, the hairs in the ears, the inside of the ear, and the highlighted part of the dark fur. So around the edge of the forehead, for example, that will give us a nice, cool highlight at the end, down the centre of the nose here, along the top of the fleshy part, the nose pad, a little bit around the eye as well, just on the eyelid perhaps, into the corner of the eye where the tear duct is. Remember, these areas are all cool, so cool areas that have a highlight, then the violet is a great colour to use. A little bit on the edge of his jowl, and maybe a bit more highlight just on the fleshy part. Just a quick check round, a little bit more on the hair inside the ear, a bit more on there. Notice the colour is quite flat, hardly any detail at all, and that will be the end of our blocking out process.